that we started a campaign against the New York Nazi Times, which is one of the most vicious newspapers. I think it's probably the worst newspaper because it's the most powerful and influential newspaper in America. And it has done so much harm and so much damage to so many good people over the years. It's such an evil paper. It's a paper that excused and even praised the election of Hitler. And this was a Jewish-owned newspaper that was writing positive things about Hitler when he seized power in Germany in 1933. This is a newspaper that wrote about Stalin and it wrote about the Soviet Union like it was paradise on earth in the 1920s, 1930s, when the Stalin was murdering millions of citizens in the Soviet Union. The New York Nazi Times not only covered up the mass murder, but they were writing about it like this was paradise on earth, like this nightmare was paradise on earth. The New York Nazi Times was reporting on it that way. The New York Nazi Times, of course, was one of the main factors in the Holocaust. They did everything they could to suppress the news about millions of Jews being murdered in the Holocaust because they wanted the Holocaust to go forward. They are such self-hating scum. They actually didn't want the Jews to be rescued. And that's not an exaggeration. They were against, even after they helped murder 6 million Jews, they were against the creation of the State of Israel. They opposed the creation of any Jewish state. They felt the Jewish people have no right to a homeland of their own. This is the same New York Nazi Times that wants to give the Arabs dozens of homelands, and it's never enough. And every other third world group. But the Jews, they didn't even want to give one puny little homeland, even after the Holocaust. That's the type of self-hating scum you have at the New York Nazi Times. And since the creation of Israel, for 62 years now, they're doing everything they can to destroy Israel. When we were running the Jewish Defense League, one of the things we did is we decided to wreck their vending machines. They have these vending machines where they sell the newspapers. It's little machines on the street corners of New York. You still have some of them, not as many as you used to have because of the internet and because of everything else. Much fewer people buy the newspapers now. But, and by the way, it's foolish to buy newspapers when you have the internet. It's crazy. But anyway, in the 1980s, when I was running the Jewish Defense League, and we had a very active organization, there were huge numbers of vending machines selling the New York Nazi Times on almost every street corner in Manhattan. And on street corners in affluent neighborhoods in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Long Island, you had hundreds and hundreds of vending machines. And you'd put coins in the vending machine. You put 25 cents to buy. At that time, it was 25 cents. Now I think it's 60 cents for a newspaper. But it was 25 cents at that time. You put 25 cents, you put a quarter in, or you put 2 dimes and a nickel in the vending machine, and it opens up the machine, and you can pull out the newspaper, and you get the newspaper. And many people bought the paper that way. Many people. So we decided that we're going to put crazy glue in the holes of the newspaper to prevent to wreck the vending machines, to jam up and destroy the vending machines. We put crazy glue in hundreds of vending machines all across New York City for the New York Nazi Times newspaper. We jammed up their vending machines. And so hundreds and hundreds of these vending machines were wrecked, or their locks were wrecked. They'd have to replace the whole lock, or they'd have to replace the whole machine. I mean, it was a real pain in the neck for them. And they were selling a lot of newspapers through these vending machines. So they didn't know exactly, we actually wrote to them because we wanted them to know that this is being done by Jews. So we actually wrote to them and said that we deny responsibility but applaud whoever is doing this, that we know somebody's doing this. We didn't admit we're doing it because they would have had us arrested right away. So we said we deny responsibility but applaud whoever is jamming up these vending machines because your newspaper is a Nazi, filthy Nazi Jew-hating newspaper. Well, they got back to us after hundreds of their machines were jammed up. They wanted to speak to us. They tried all types of things, and they wanted to meet with us in order to discuss editorial. The editorial, the head of the editorial page, Frankel. His name was Frankel, Marvin Frankel. What a name! What a what a joke he was. He invited me up to the New York Nazi Times building to speak to him. And people from the editorial division there were there to meet with me. And they sat me down. How are you? And do you want some coffee? You want this? And they spoke to me. And how can we? What is this? How do you know? Can you tell us who's doing this? And of course, I said I have no idea who's doing it. But I said that I believe the reason is because of the way you're reporting and so on. Anyway, you know what they did? They started giving us more newspaper coverage to try to appease us. That's the type of newspaper. They tried giving us more newspaper coverage for the JDL to try to appease us. So that's what you're dealing with that newspaper. But it didn't last for long, of course. But still, we drove them absolutely crazy. We did many other things against them as well. But it's just one of the things we did. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if this had been, of course, I eventually went to prison for bombings, but can you imagine if there had been a sustained campaign against the New York Nazi Times like this, tying up their telephones, jamming up their vending machines, doing other things against them, a real boycott against them, a boycott against companies that advertise in the newspaper? Can you imagine what we could do to that newspaper? I mean, these are the type of things that Jewish organizations should be doing. In order to teach a lesson to these vicious criminals who call themselves reporters and who call themselves journalists. They're the scum of the earth.